The idea that Bernie voters who refused to vote for Hillary in 2016 cost her the election is a myth. Still, it's a fact that there are those Sanders supporters who chose not to vote for her in the general, and there will be Sanders supporters who won't vote for Biden this year, no matter what we say, no matter what any Josh says. Our next guest, who is Josh Holland, contributor to The Nation, contributing editor to AlterNet, and host of We've Got Issues, who also used to write for Moyers and Company, the amazing show that I missed terribly. He says that, this is par for the course and it's not unique to Bernie Sanders supporters. Josh, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Julianna. I appreciate that.
How do you think Biden, you say it's par for the course, so this is to be expected. Do you think they will, calm down after the giant disappointment and then see that it might actually be sensible if they want, progressive values to have someone in office that they can then push to the left? Or what do you think? What do you think will happen?
I mean, the thing, I think it's an odd conversation to be having. And I think that part of it is that social media amplifies, voices that don't necessarily represent a large constituency. Here we have the least popular president in modern polling history, who will be vying for re-election during a recession that I don't think we've even really gotten our heads wrapped around, and fueled by a pandemic that he woefully mismanaged. The New York Times reported that 90% of American deaths would have been avoided if we had taken this seriously and put in a national lockdown order just 2 weeks earlier. So the idea that a lot of people who are within the Democratic coalition, Democrats and independents who lean towards Democrats, are going to pass an opportunity to vote against Donald Trump seems unlikely to me. And I think that, one point that you made in the introduction is really important, which is that, yes, there will be Sanders supporters and Buttigieg supporters and
Warren,
maybe some Bloomberg supporters, Warren supporters, who will stay home in November, because that happens every single cycle. And it happens on the Republican side, and it happens on the Democratic side. A handful of people will vote Republican, and a handful of people will vote third party, of course. And the thing that I think is fueling this conversation beyond Democrats' habitual hand-wringing, and, we should be worried about everything, I think it's appropriate,
right.
Is the mythology that Sanders supporters stayed home and en masse in 2016 and cost Hillary Clinton the election.
Is that not true? I think I bought into that mythology.
That is not true. I mean, the evidence to support it is not there. We know that there was a group of Sanders 2016 primary supporters who voted for Donald Trump. That was a lower share than Hillary Clinton 08 supporters who voted for John McCain. There was also a smaller share of Sanders supporters who crossed over than Kasich supporters who voted for Trump, and also Rubio supporters. Fewer Rubio supporters voted for Trump. More of them voted for Clinton than Sanders supporters. So again, you're always going to have this. This happens because people are unhappy, right? They didn't get their person. They're unhappy. They're going to go.
Josh, I think it also is kind of a mythology that is painted around Bernie Sanders people, that we're like ideologues, that we are BernieBro-esque, even if most of us are women, that, with all that comes, we're just like hoodlums who have this idea and we're not going to be, that we're unreasonable and that we don't understand politics. I think that narrative gets pushed because of how Bernie supporters are painted. So what do you think about that?
I think that a lot of this is stereotype driven. And I do think at the same time, there's this, the reverse of it. Yes. I mean, the BernieBro thing, it's true of a small share of his supporters. I would say that, this is his base is the only one In 2020, among those 714 candidates that we had, his was the only base that believed that there was a widespread belief. Not everybody believed it, that he had been ripped off at the previous cycle. So people were maybe more aggressive for that reason. But yes, I think that it's completely true that a lot of this idea that Bernie supporters are gonna pass up an opportunity to vote against a venal neo-fascist crackpot reality TV star is based on stereotypes,
Yeah. And
right?
I always think, like, who does it serve? There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of propagandizing. Who does it serve for people to say, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for Biden because I vote for," it doesn't.
Well, look, I mean, we know that Donald Trump amplifies this every single opportunity he gets. So that's certainly one person who it favors. I mean, you know,
Right. If Donald
dividing the
Trump is saying it, I'm
coalition.
like, this can't be good for anyone. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's true. Anything Donald Trump says is not good for anyone. I think an evergreen tweet, as they say. Yeah, it's dividing the coalition is key. But here's the thing that we've seen: there's the kind of discourse. Oh no, Democrats aren't enthusiastic about Biden. And I will say this: I am among the least enthusiastic about Joe Biden. He was not my first choice, my second choice, my third choice. He
Your
was not in my
15th
top.
choice.
He was not in my top 10.
Was he
Right?
before Marianne Williamson?
He was above Tulsi Gabbard. He was above Marianne Williamson.
I think Marianne Williamson was more exciting. At least it would be interesting.
Okay, look, Marianne Williamson would be more exciting. I would grant you that, but I'm not. That's excitement is not my only criterion. And
Yes.
No, he definitely would have been above Marianne Williamson. He would have been above. I forget some of the kind of generic conservative white guys like Seth. Did Seth Moulton run? Did he even run?
I think so.
I believe he ran at some point.
I wish Governor Inslee had stayed in at this point. He seems like he would have been a really great win.
I don't know why we didn't. I mean, look, there's a lot of postmortems right now. I think a big mistake, and one that we're not really talking about because it's not popular, is that the left, the progressive faction, did not hesitate to kind of coalesce around a candidate who had a lot of animosity among the kind of more mainstream faction, that was lingering animosity that I don't think we factored in as much as we might have. And we might have decided, well, Inslee is a good. The thing about someone like Inslee is that he could have united the various factions of the party in a really cohesive way, I think, by being.
Oh, we don't want that. We want someone.
He's a serious guy. He's a progressive guy. Climate change was central to his platform. I think Warren could have served a similar function. Yeah, we ended up with someone that we're not necessarily.
Yeah, we cannibalized our own. We cannibalized all the better candidates.
Yeah, we did. We basically savaged better candidates, and then we ended up with kind of the familiar, like, old slipper, of a candidate. But
we did savage Joe Biden also, and how come he's still here?
Well, he had extreme.
We were equal opportunity savagers, weren't we?
Joe Biden benefited greatly from the idea that he was uniquely suited to win back white working class voters, right? That was the thing about Joe Biden, and this has been true as long as I've been paying attention. He has this reputation as the kind of guy who can go into a diner and talk to one of those Trump supporting, oh, I voted for Obama, but now I voted for Trump. Those voters, their votes apparently, according to pundits, count more than other people's votes. They're very important they're worth like 3 black people's votes, I believe. So
I feel like I'm on the part of the working class. I'm a part of the working class voter. On the
The
part of the
white,
working class voter, I
non-college
feel offended
educated.
that they think that I can't, vote for someone who's not just a guy.
A lot of that discourse was completely offensive. But okay, the point that I was going to make is that you have all of this concern about Democratic enthusiasm around Joe Biden, and what we've seen again and again and again and again is that Democrats are and Democratic leaners are fired up, not because of Joe Biden or whoever their congressional candidate was during the midterms. They want to vote against Trump. They're fired up to vote against Trump. And you know what? It makes complete sense because look at Trump. I mean, why would you not be?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's a comment coming in from our folks. This is from Rebecca, who is actually part of the ActTV team. Let me get it.
Hi, Rebecca.
She's the best. So as long as empire and capitalism is upheld, they'll basically put anyone in, even Trump. That was the they don't really care. And she's talking about sort of the corporate forces behind the DNC.
Well, I mean, with these conversations, it's always difficult to know who they are. I think that, one of the overarching kind of narratives of the primary season, and this I'm talking about voters, of course, is that voters did not prioritize finding someone who they wanted to have a beer with or someone who they were most closely aligned with ideologically. They were not looking for someone whose policy agenda they liked the best. They were looking for someone who wants to beat Trump. I have not seen much evidence that that isn't the case among, donors and Hollywood elites and whoever you want to talk about, or party leadership. I think that, there are certainly people out there who don't care whether it's Trump or Biden, but I think they're pretty few and far between. And we just remind people that we're really, really, really polarized. Like people are polarized in this country, and it's not like I don't believe in the, in the donors who donate heavily to Democrats or Republicans and don't care. If they're donating heavily to a party, there's industries that kind of spread the wealth around. But if you're an individual who gives big money to the Republicans all the time and it's not like you don't have an interest in Republicans winning. Same with Democrats.
Sheldon Adelson doesn't spend money on. Well, maybe he does.
Sheldon Adelson cares about Republicans winning, right? So I mean, of course there are lots of wealthy people that do spread the money to both sides because they want goodies. They want specific, tangible goodies. They want access. Donald Trump used to donate big to Democrats back in the day.
I think this is actually a very good thing. And I'm glad you came on to talk about it. I'm glad you wrote about it. We're talking about basically your piece, Democrats' Worst Nightmare. Here's the truth about the freak out over Bernie or bust. And I think that was a really good point about how anyone who is upset that their candidate is in goes through like a Warren or bust phase or this or bust phase. And then at some point we come to our fucking senses. How many more pandemics do you think we can squeeze in before November?
Well, I mean, one final point about this is that I have noticed, it is anecdotal, but in my social media feeds, whenever I click, and I do this because I'm a nerd and I'm weird this way, but when I see someone saying, "Oh, I refuse to vote for whoever," I always click, and it's almost always someone from a safe blue or sometimes a safe red state, right? For the most part, I don't care who most people are voting for, right? That's the system we have with the Electoral College. It's a terrible system, and in 40 states, or give or take one or two, it's just melodrama, and those states we know which way they're going to go.
We're speaking with Josh Holland of AlterNet and the Nation. What's next, Josh? What's coming up on your newest podcast? We usually listen to a segment of it on Fridays.
Oh, I am going to have Lindsay Byerstein on, and we're going to talk about some of the science of COVID-19 because this is a new disease. I mean, it's right in the name. It's the novel coronavirus, and
Ooh.
there's a lot of studies coming out. We're finding out things about how it works and how it may not work, and um, I don't see enough coverage of the kind of nuts and bolts of this thing. So we're gonna do
Yeah, my
a
question is like,
segment and
how
talk
is
about
it?
that stuff.
Here's some questions I have, Josh. Maybe you can ask her and then I'll listen to these.
All right.
The questions I have are, how is it possible that it could be so different from other types of viruses in terms of how people can have it and just be walking around and then all of a sudden be symptomatic 3 weeks in, but they have shed it all over the place in the meantime? That seems a little different than, your average flu where you might be shedding it for 2 days before you get your fever, but not such a long time.
Well, that
How did
one
it get so
actually,
novel?
I mean, that is, there is variance in the incubation period for pathogens. And it is not so odd to have a long incubation period. What I would say is that this is the perfect kind of pathogen for a raging pandemic, right? So if you have, remember when conservatives freaked out about Ebola in 2014? That was a stupid freak out because Ebola is absolutely terrible for people who contract the disease. But because it's so terrible, it is not a good candidate to spread like wildfire. Why? It puts you on your ass very
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah.
You're not getting on a bus and going to work and spreading Ebola around for a few weeks. There's no mild symptoms. You've got Ebola, and it's not transmitted as easily. This is the kind of disease that is, again, just ideal for a pandemic. We don't have immunity because it's novel. It mutated and became, it's brand new. So none of us have developed any kind of immunity towards this pathogen. It's extremely easy to transmit in that it lives on surfaces for an extended period of time. Some viruses die within 30 minutes outside the body or whatever, 10 minutes. This one can linger for hours, and according to some evidence, at least the RNA, which may not be the virus itself, can linger for weeks.
Josh, do you know
And
if there are other viruses that are at least kind of similar to this? It seems so novel that, like, how did it get so novel is the question I have. Like, how did it go so much further than
it's
some of the other things that we're familiar with?
I would stress I would stress the fact that we don't have any immunity built up to it. So it is not.
But it's still a coronavirus.
What's that?
See, this is
it is according to it is according to Kellyanne Conway, the 19th coronavirus, because she didn't understand it was named after the year 2019. 19th.
And what's her job again? What is she in charge of? That's probably
nervous breakdown. I have 19 nervous breakdowns watching these people, watching these idiots every day. Let me tell you something. It is bad to die of this disease. It's painful. It's a lonely death. But if the stupidest people in this country kill me, I am going to be extremely unhappy, and it compounds it. Like the idea of dying because these people, these jerk offs, were so incompetent that it's just worse. It's just worse than
it galls you.
It's worse than the death itself, almost.
Well, they want to kill us. I mean, they talk about Republicans talk about Democrats or liberals in the same way they talk. That Nazis used to talk about Jews. I'm finding that within my own family. You can find, like, I'm a liberal, right? When they talk about liberals and just how horrible they are, baby killers, awful, XYZ. This is they're dehumanizing us, and so I think they're kind of happy if some of them kill some of us with their not willing.
I absolutely think that that's the case, and the reverse is almost maddening in that there is a very strong temptation when you see these idiots who are protesting shelter-in-place orders, and with their Confederate flags in Michigan, in the great southern state of Michigan. There is a temptation to think, you know what, go out, just go out and lick some banister somewhere, get it, infect yourself. I don't even care. If you want to kill yourself, do it. But of course, those of us who believe in science, who trust the public health experts, understand that those people, if infected, will give it to other people who are decent people and not stupid.
Josh Holland, thank you for joining us again today. I really appreciate it. It's always great to have you
Julianna,
on. Very
thank you
happy
so
to
much
have
for
you as
having
a
me.
regular. You can follow Josh at Joshua HOL on Twitter. Go read all the pieces. Thank you, Josh, again. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, hopefully.
Thank you, Julianna. Hopefully we'll be
Thank
around.
you.